Oh boy. Oh boy. Look at that. Ooh. Ended up getting another burnt down Hellcat, and I'm really happy it's here because when I was bidding on it at the auction, I was unsure of how intact the engine was just because of how it looks. So we have the whole back end burned. I'm guessing the fuel tank's probably burned out. Looks like the whole trunk is burned out as well. But when you come up to the front, it looks like the fire wasn't as intense. So hopefully when I pull this hood, because they didn't have pictures of it open at the auction, I'll have hopefully a good 6.2 supercharged Hemi. Did burn that light. It actually doesn't look like it damaged the grill when it burned it down. So we have a good grill. We also might have a good headlight. Looks like the bottom grills are all good. The front bumper is not good, but this piece of trim right here and this piece of trim is also good. Unfortunately, on this burnt down Hellcat, it looks like the fenders didn't survive. The last one I got, that black burnt down narrow body Hellcat, we actually had a good set of front fenders. It looks like the brakes are all good, and it has these super spiked lug nuts. Doesn't look like this wheel or the other side wheel got as hot as the rear ones. So I think we have two good front wheels. The two back wheels are definitely completely toast just because they have melted. They'll be good scrap or maybe some wall art. Actually really surprised at how well this SRT logo held up. And it looks like all of the calipers are going to be usable. And we have, feels like a good set of rotors. In the front, there's not that bad of a lip on the rotors. So we have some kind of toasty calipers, but I think we'll have a good set of brakes as well. It almost looks like the oil cooler may have survived. I can see oil cooler lines down there that are unburned. Let's get this hood off of here, what's left of it, so we can see what we're working with. I really like the color of this car. It reminds me of something. Man, it looks like I might have got a little lucky with this car. We have a smaller GripTech 2.85. Is that 8.5 or 6.5 pulley? That's nice. We have an adjustable, I believe this is an AAD tensioner right here. Yes, that's an AAD tensioner. Catch can, that looks good. Everything's just charred a little bit from the padding that's under the hood. And then we have, it looks like an oil cap that didn't all the way burn through, so we might be safe. Hopefully no water got in the engine. You can see that that is toast, but I think for the most part we're gonna have a good supercharger, and I think a good 6.2 because you can still see orange. Too bad the injectors are burned. We have some bigger injectors. I'm guessing they're probably 1050X's. You can see that top hat right there. On all of these, this thing maybe was making some good power. Oh, hood grill. Oh, that's a nice valve cover right there. Sounds crispy. Whew. Jesus. Jesus. Ooh, another somewhat good fender. Oh yeah. Now that I have the Charger finally in the shop, I can strip out the drivetrain. I did try out these Harbor Freight wheel dollies. So if you guys remember from the previous episode, I got the Harbor Freight pinch weld dollies that worked really nice because they had larger casters. These casters on these and the Daytonas are way too small, so getting them to start moving is the biggest pain. And these cars are like 4,800 pounds, fully loaded. And this thing probably burned out. I'd say it probably weighs around maybe maximum 4,000 pounds with all the stuff burned out of it. And it was a nightmare to get these things to move. So I would recommend not buying these. Most likely they'll work on lighter cars, 2,500 pounds and under. But getting them to start moving is almost impossible. Even with 3 people, we couldn't get them to move. We had to get a truck in here and then push it back on them. And then after we got all the casters lined up and going straight, then we can move it by hand. But yeah, I would just stay away from these things. Like the lift just broke. This isn't even heavy. I'm gonna have to say that these lug nuts right here are probably the best theft deterrent that you could put on a Hellcat so people won't steal your wheels, but then they'll probably just steal the whole car. Because you have to have a special socket to get these off. It's, yeah, they're really long. Fire coolant. Oh yeah. All right. I think I'm really lucking out on this car. So when I pulled the hood, I noticed this 285 upper pulley and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I noticed this idler, which I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I saw this beefy tensioner. I don't know why you need both of these if you have the beefy idler. Then I pulled the radiator and I saw this incognito pulley, which I'm guessing that's the reason why they have the aftermarket injectors in it. And I'm guessing those are 1050Xs because usually with a 285, you don't really have to tune for it because it's such a small increase. So a lot of people say that you could just throw a 285 on and you're good, is what I've heard. But then with the 10% overdriven, I believe those are 10% over, I think this kit makes like 900 wheel is what it's for, and I'm guessing that's probably why there's aftermarket injectors. Then I pulled the throttle body, no water, and it looks really nice and clean. So it doesn't look like it had a bunch of blow by. I was hoping there's gonna be some spacers down there, but there's no spacers. Looks like on this side got a lot hotter than the passenger side. All the coils are bad, but on this side, all the coils are good and all those injectors are good. This side, the injectors are kind of questionable. I'm not sure if we're gonna have a set of 8 injectors, but if I come out with a set of 4 1050Xs, that would be ideal. I mean, that wouldn't be bad. I could use it on something else. Plus all the extra parts. He's a little bit higher up. I can come under here and see kind of what happened. And now that I have her up, I've changed my mind at what I think happened to the car. You can see this is broken. This is busted big time. My guess is they hit a curb or drove over a curb, and then maybe they punctured the fuel tank. Something happened with the fuel lighting on fire, because usually that's what causes these cars to burn down, is either fuel, brake fluid, or transmission fluid. And it's not transmission fluid, because up here, the transmission looks perfect. And we have a set of cats, those look good. And even this lower cover, lower subframe look good. They don't look like they caught on fire. And you can see we have brake lines on both calipers, front calipers. So the front calipers might have got some fire on them, but I think they're pretty good. And the wheels in the front, so far, other than being burnt, they look decent, and we have a good set of front knuckles. What I really wanted was a good set of rear knuckles, but at this point, I think that both of these knuckles are no good. You can just definitely see that one. I don't know, that one might be savable, maybe. And the axles are also all messed up, but just from the fire, and the exhaust really isn't that good. It has, it's weird, the coating, the black coating burned off. Yeah, they must have hit something. Ooh, just barely. Oh yeah, problem solved. All right, moment of truth. Do we have an oil pan full of oil? Or do we have an oil pan full of water? Jesus, this thing's on there. Be that tight, guys. Oh, this is gonna go fast if there's a bunch of water in it. Oh, there's just a little bit of water. That wasn't bad. Oh, that wasn't bad at all. gonna be water in those. Careful! Oh, these are still nice and rubbery, not melted, so that's a good sign. Oh, and the plugs look great too. All right, that looks good too. All right. Oh, yeah. There we go. Just a little squishy on the top. This stuff turns into like a glue. It's nasty if it gets too hot. Oh, that's cool. It's like a blob. The blob of aluminum. The glass is kind of cool too. It's like, just shatters now. Really easy. Oh, this whole thing's covered in like glass. Oh, it's like brand new underneath. Be asking yourself, why did I just drop this fuel tank out of the car? It's completely ruined, but there's an aftermarket fuel pump in it, and all of this stuff's billet aluminum. So all I have to do is put 2 new pumps in it, re-anodize it. As long as nothing melted, which I don't think it did, we might have ourselves another fuel pump for another car. I really think the AAD catch cans are a lot better unit. This thing is really small in that little bracket. That unscrews. It's kind of a pain in the ass. Yeah, how are you going to unscrew that? Like, such a pain in the ass. Let's see how much blow by she had turned up. Hopefully it looks good. I'll know if the engine's bad or not by this. I mean, it had a little bit in there. It smells good. I mean, the issue is why there's so much blow-by right here. They don't have the spacers fixed. Nice. Just stand. There we go. Have our diff. Now we gotta see. We probably got a 262 diff. The issue with these is this ring right here. When you buy used differentials, most of the time places will either drop them on this ring and dent them because it's aluminum, and then you'll have a vibration in your differential. Wow, this is the best diff I've felt in a long time. It barely has any play, but this seal, probably since this is burnt, this rubber, and these aren't as burnt, but you can see they've swelled. This one almost pushed itself. Wow, look at that. That one removed itself. Didn't even have to press it out. Moment of truth. Oh, still full of gear oil. That's a good sign. Now that I have the diff apart, I can see that this is the undesirable one. Most of the time, Chargers, you get 262s. The 309 is a better option for Hellcats, but the wheels spin a lot more than a 262. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the housing like I do all the time with 262s, so I could use it on 309s and up, and then I'll just end up selling the ring gear and the LSD. I might actually keep the LSD unit, but I'll sell the ring gear and the pinion separately, and then I'll have all this other stuff just for parts, and it really is nice to just keep this stuff laying around. Another good thing is because of the fire actually burned all the bushings out for me. So all I have to do is push these out. I'll recoat the subframe, put solid bushings in, and we'll be ready to go as long as none of this stuff got messed up from the accident. It looks like this one's okay, and it looks like that one should be okay. And I need to figure something out about these bushings. Oh, double trouble. El burrito. I'm gonna have to say that I probably got the most out of this Charger Hellcat that I possibly could. I did end up cutting these frame horns off just because the fire didn't get all the way down to them. Usually when I pull these, I would pull them as a whole assembly, but since the fire got to the strut towers, and I believe that's high strength steel, so it since it burned like it did, it burned all the paint, it probably lost all of its strength. So I don't want to sell them as a whole front clip. And another reason why I pulled these off is because I needed this piece and that piece, as well as that outside frame rail piece for the red Magnum. But let's check these cylinders out. All right, let's do the first cylinder. We're gonna go down. Try to get in there. Oh man! What? Oh, they probably were running E85. Look how clean that is. Yeah, this thing probably was definitely on some E. Oh, shit. These are the cleanest pistons I've ever seen in a Hemi. Wondering if the buildup on the outside of the piston and why the top is clean is because it wasn't on E85 for very long before it caught on fire. It just seems really weird. Usually if it's on E85, the whole piston top is clean, and it looks like it has started to clean it. So I'm really happy. Oh yeah, that's a really nice looking piston right there. It has buildup. You can see the buildup right there. It also has some, like, I don't know if that's oil on the side, what's going on there. You can see it almost looks like it's gonna flake off. I'm guessing it was because it wasn't on E85 very long. That's what that's what has to have happened. But I mean, that's a really nice looking piston right there. And I really like this tool. People are saying, oh, this Chinese junk you're reviewing. I mean, I've been using this for a long time and I really like that it works. Oh, that's like a fully clean piston. Woo, she looks good. Yeah, that's my guess. It wasn't on E85 very long. You can see the carbon buildup in the center on there. It looks like it's kind of getting ready to flake off. Oh yeah, same thing. Nice piston. We got a nice crosshatch right there. Look at the crosshatch in that cylinder. And you can see it looks like the cylinder wall is messed up, but it's just the reflection of that carbon buildup. Change the view so I can see the valves a little bit better. Oh, look at that cylinder wall. Look how nice that thing looks. Man, this thing's a cream puff, and it was making some power. Doing the passenger side. Oh yeah, that is a nice looking piston. This thing was running great. Yeah. Oh, nice. Nice, very nice. I'm just gonna skip. People are like, oh, yeah. Ooh, man, look how nice that is. The last one, it's gonna be blown apart. Nope, just as clean. Looks like it's even, yeah, you can see that it's cleaning it up from E85. Really happy because this is 100% a good engine. Nothing got hot enough. Usually you can tell if the valve covers get hot, they bubble and they won't have the paint on them. This side, it looks like it's bad, but that's just all the plastic from that cover that covers the fuel rail just melted onto it in the oil cap. So I'm really happy about that. The supercharger got charred and some of the coating. There was a little bit more heat back here, so it actually burned the powder coat off of this crossover tube. And the injectors on the driver's side are all bad, but I think these 4 injectors are good. So let's get those spark plugs in. Thing looks brand spanking new. All right, it's time to see what size injectors we have here. All right. These are definitely aftermarket injectors. That one looks good. Injector dynamics. What the hell? 1050X's. Look at that. So this looks like a good one. Doesn't look like the fire hurt it. I'll probably have them all flowed. Another good one. Kind of getting to the back and melted the cap. It's time to pull the supercharger lid to see what we have going on in here, because it got pretty burned. Or I should say charged. Got charged. Okay. Man, how are you supposed to get this off now? How are you supposed to get this untensioned? It hits the idler. I don't even think you're supposed to have an idler on with this setup. Now I could take the last bolts out of the supercharger, which actually hold the supercharger down. Since there was no water in the cylinders, I don't think there should be any water in here. Maybe just some melted stuff. Put the belts off, I could check the supercharger. Feels pretty good. I'm gonna pull the supercharger off the engine because it needs to be completely gone through. It has burned, all the seals need to be replaced, the intercooler bricks need to be pressure tested, which I think they're perfectly fine. This needs to be pulled out of the intercooler brick, and then the rotors need to be recoated. So the Teflon coating that comes on them from IHI is a very poor choice in coating for a supercharger and a supercharger rotor. Yes, it is slick, but what happens is when you're running the engine and running the supercharger, for some reason it starts to flake off. You can see it's flaking right there. A lot of people say that this flaking is because of contact between the supercharger rotors. It does have a smaller pulley. It's a 285, which isn't crazy. But if you look where the coating has flaked off here, there should be missing coating from the corresponding part of the other rotor, which there's not. On all of them, you can see it's just the end. It doesn't look like it has any issues with thrust load, even though it has a smaller pulley. Like I said, it's a 285, so it's not super crazy, but it does have an overdrive pulley on the crank. So it's probably almost like a 275 pulley. I'd say 10% over. I don't know, I'd have to figure that out, the math, but I think it's like 275 since it has a 10% lower. But you would think that this coating would last, and it doesn't. So it's the wrong coating for the application. All supercharger rotors seem to be coated in this Teflon instead of Cerakote. So Cerakote has a few options which are a lot better than Teflon. So you can go with the E100 Blackout or most of the E-line of Cerakote, which would really increase the slickness of the surface, and it would last a lot longer and it wouldn't have this chipping issue. Or you could go with Micro Slick on these rotors, which it's a high temp coating. Use Micro Slick on the top of pistons, but as it wears, you don't get any of this flaking. So as Micro Slick, if these rotors ever did come in contact, it pretty much buries it or it makes it go into the metal. So it might wear and look like it's worn, but it's always still there, which is a great thing about Cerakote and Micro Slick. So this supercharger feels great, even though you can see some of the stuff chipping. It did burn, so I would like to go through and replace the bearings. Let's get it off the engine just so it's out of the way. There we go. So this is a really prime example of why you want to have spacers with O-rings instead of using the factory gaskets. You can see the oil trail from the crankcase to the intake on both sides, on both heads. And that's why I always replace the factory gaskets right here. You can see this is where it blows by on both sides. And then this just has O-rings and it blocks it completely off. So then you never have to worry about all that blow by. And then this also spaces the supercharger and keeps it cooler. Now that I know I have a good 6.2 supercharged Hemi, another 8 HP 90 transmission that's good as well, and then I have a bunch of parts that I need to organize. And I also have another good supercharger that I have to rebuild. I have to rebuild like 6 of these things right here. Besides that, I have a bunch of Brembo calipers that I need to list because they're taking up way too much space, as well as these superchargers. I almost thought about selling them as rebuildable units and just say that they were in fires, just so I don't have to waste my time doing it myself, just because it's going to be a lot of work. There's a lot of parts of Cerakote, but I've already started on 2 of them. Another thing I'm going to be doing coming up in the next video is getting this thing finally started. So I'm working with Fragola on some transmission cooler lines. I already made the AC lines and all of the wiring is now complete, which is really nice because this thing is ready to run and drive, which I'm very excited about. And I know a lot of people have been waiting for it, but I don't want to cut corners and I don't want to just say, you know, get it running and then it's not going to drive for a really long time. I'm also having a company make the billet aluminum knuckles to adjust all the suspension geometry. Eventually I will do a billet aluminum lower control arm, but for now the billet aluminum knuckles will be worlds better than the factory Durango Hellcat or Trackhawk knuckles. And I'm also starting to clean a bunch of the shop up. So I had a bunch of Hellcat stuff right here on pallets. Really didn't make sense. It's just taking up a lot of space. End the video here. If you like these videos, make sure to click the subscribe button, throw a thumbs up, throw a comment below. As always, see you guys next time.